Growing up, most of us had a special stuffed friend, or more, that we carried with us everywhere. They were our best friend, our closest confidant, and our protector from nightmares. It's commonly believed that the last part is a stuffed animal's purpose, springing to life to fight off the things that go bump in the night and put monsters back in their place under the bed. Now the war against the shadows of nightmares is in the players' hands as they discover the tale of a team of stuffies, their little girl's new bed, and the threat lurking underneath. This is Stuffed Fables. Stuffed Fables is a 2 to 4 player game recommended for ages 7 and up about adventure, fighting monsters, and saving toys. From the mind of Jerry Hawthorne, creator of Mice and Mystics, and published by Plaid Games, players take turns controlling the stuffies through an entire storybook of quests. When their little girl upgrades to a big girl bed, spooky things start happening, and strange creatures show up. It's up to them to protect their child and find out what is going on. Gathering equipment, searching for lost toys, and fighting your way through the pages, you unravel events for each story. But will you return while your child still sleeps, or will she awaken to realize her friends are lost? Or worse. At first, gameplay seems intimidating, with a wide variety of actions and events you need to understand before you even open the storybook. Once you get started and perform a few turns, however, it really flows naturally. After picking the first bookkeeper, they read the story and the instructions laid out for each page of the book. It is fairly straightforward, the first page keeping things very simple and expanded rules as you venture on. Once the story is read, players take turns which consist of drawing dice, planning your stuffy's actions using a simple color-based system, and resolving those actions before the next stuffy does the same. Enemies attack only if present and if they have enough black dice, which can be drawn over multiple turns. This gives stuffies plenty of time to plan their approach to each page's goal before they have to worry about combat. There are limited equipment slots per stuffy, so with melee and ranged weaponry, accessories, and items, the combat system is surprisingly deep for its simple execution. Once these few basic things are understood, they become exciting and engaging as the story plays out. Key events are defined in the book, but the outcome is heavily determined by the actions you take in gameplay. I personally messed up a few steps, like when to refill discarded dice in the bag and what happens when you earn enough black dice on a map that has the surge rule, but eventually these just became part of what we understood to do and the adventure took focus again. There are many components to the game, from cards and figures to dice and tokens, but the central focus is the storybook, not only telling you what events happen when, but also serving as the playing space for the scenario at hand. The beautifully illustrated boards are laid out in a grid fashion, using colored lines for dice-specific restrictions and white lines for permanent barriers. The accompanying information page contains the story for each scenario, special rules and events, and even scannable QR codes linking to explanation videos from Watch It Played. A very nice touch, especially for younger players who might need a little more explanation. Each 2-page spread is a self-contained segment of the adventure, with several having multiple outcomes like a choose-your-own-adventure book. The only difference here is that the choice is up to your skill and luck as a stuffy. There are 35 dice in the game, 7 colors of 5 dice each, white, black, yellow, blue, green, orange, and pink, representing stuffing healing, enemy movement, defense, ranged attack, melee attack, and wild cards respectively. The orange and pink dice are referred to in the game as red and purple, but the colors are to help with colorblind players. A very inclusive and thoughtful approach. A variety of cards are used in the game, and each deck is printed beautifully on standard-sized cards, except for the status effects, which are printed on miniature cards. There are also oversized character cards for each stuffy, detailing their abilities and tracking their stats. The artwork for all of them is as vibrantly detailed and lovely to look at as the art in the book or on the box. The most important of the decks is the story deck, containing specific cards for the events of each story. As you play through each tale, the cards are added to their respective decks, and starting the entire book over is as simple as reconstructing the story deck. The boss and minion deck contains the various enemies you will encounter, and the threat is very well balanced. The item deck holds the various weapons, equipment, and accessories the stuffies use for their attack and defense. The Lost deck contains short stories of all the lost toys you will encounter, and offer a risk or reward level of choice when encountered. The Sleeping deck details the status of the little girl, and whether or not the Awoken card is drawn could determine the outcome of the story. There's a small deck of reminder cards for various board effects and statuses, as well as a deck of status effects ranging from Torn to Courageous and everything in between. Tokens and actual buttons are used for Stuffy and boss health, locations of lost toys, ability hearts, and other bonuses. Stuffing is earned for rolling successful white dice rolls, keeping the Stuffies strong. Hearts can activate abilities that could turn the tide of an event or an encounter. A variety of colored buttons are used as currency and sometimes for lost toy events. The sidetrack token helps organize enemy and player group challenges, and story-specific tokens like the train and red wagon are used for special scenarios. The important bookmark token signifies the bookkeeper for that page, who decides various things like enemy placement and movement, and reads the stories within. This token moves periodically, getting every player involved in the tale. All the tokens are brightly printed and wonderfully detailed, clearly representing their purpose. But the most level of detail was reserved for the miniatures, which are one of the most impressive parts of the game, second only to the storybook itself. Each Stuffy's personality from their artwork is perfectly captured by their mini. The enemies look like they could come to life themselves. Each enemy's base shape helps to identify it with its respective card, as some minions are leaders, which are slightly stronger. Boss figures tower over the Stuffies with their intimidating stances. All figures are made of a solid plastic that doesn't feel overly fragile. There are still some thin parts, like these robot arms, so don't be reckless with them. These beautiful figures bring the events on the storybook boards to life wonderfully, and could potentially do more so if painted. Personally, I'm not skilled with painting miniatures, so I'm going to leave mine alone, but they are still gorgeous to look at. If you're interested in seeing the game unboxed, with a closer look at each part, be sure to watch the unboxing video I made. Stuffed Fables presents itself as a storybook adventure game, and it does just that. Every ounce of this game is dripping with storytelling charm. The storybook acting as both the storytelling resource and the playing space is absolutely inspired. From the use of buttons to the playable characters being stuffed animals, it ignites a childhood wonder. While maintaining enough role-playing depth for the more advanced player, the system is simple enough even for younger ones. The bookkeeper changing after each page keeps players engaged in the story as well as the gameplay, and the cooperative nature promotes communication, strategy building, and problem solving. After your adventure, each of the 7 stories has different endings depending on if the little girl woke up or not, and several talking points to open discussion on the themes present in each story. This thoughtful little extra accentuates the game's ability to appeal across various ages. I was obsessed with this game from the moment I first saw it on Watch It Played. A unique take on storytelling using a board game as its medium, and a style of gameplay that was very different from anything else I've seen. At first glance, this game looks like it was made for children. The dice-based attributes provide a deep system for experienced gamers who like something more than basic rolling, and the color coding makes it simple to learn for younger players. The story is something everybody who has ever had a stuffed friend can identify with. I look forward to seeing if Plaid Hat Games decides to add expansions, as the structure of the game could easily accommodate. It would be as simple as adding a book with new boards and stories, but I hope to see things like new characters, minions, and bosses. Though there's a bit of a learning curve to follow the events of the book and the rules of a turn, it comes together in a way that never feels forced. Though the pacing varies when moving from play to story, the play influencing the story keeps everything engaging. If you're looking for a unique cooperative experience, look no further than Stuffed Fables. Having an 8-year-old girl and an 11-year-old boy, and my wife and I in our 30s, my family was an excellent test for the dynamic Stuffed Fables aims for. It was intimidating at first, but it didn't take long for us to see just what made it special. My children were reading a story, then living it through their gameplay. It was mesmerizing to see their interest grow as we learned the rules and applied them. Their excitement as we accomplished goals, the worry as enemies took their turns, and the engagement with each other and their parents was one of the best board gaming experiences I've ever had with them. This is their first game that plays cooperatively, and while the concept of being better is a tough one to break, it wasn't long before they saw how working together made it better. As parents, the talking point for each story provides the most intellectual experience I've ever had playing a board game. It was just a small detail, but showed that my children learned something beyond win the game. Stuffed Fables is a charming game that any family with children, or even just RPG enthusiasts, should be happy to have on their shelf. Stuffed Fables from Jerry Hawthorne and Plaid Hat Games releases February 1st. Keep your eyes out for it at your favorite game retailer. This game is easily a 10 out of 10. Thank you for watching The Raven's Nest. It was an honor to make this first episode for such a great game as Stuffed Fables. This series will continue to review games, new and old, providing insight on how my family has experienced it, as well as an overall review. My goal is to widen the spectrum of standards a game is held to as the industry has boomed towards an expanded audience. I hope to continue having new games to showcase, but also to provide new insight to games that have been around a while. So be sure to like and comment with your thoughts on this episode, and click subscribe if you wish to join me on this adventure. Happy gaming! A review copy of this game was provided by Plaid Games, and with special thanks to Jerry Hawthorne for putting in the recommendation for my review. Thank you.
Draco, hey, get out of the box. Get out of the box.
Then he would just do his wedding go.
Get out of the box. Thank you.